Zero. Okay. Welcome to South Beach. It is Sunday, September the 8th, and we're here with Vidal to have a live conversation about our upcoming election in 2024 and the choices that we have, but mostly to talk about Republican candidates. I am the president of the Federated Republican Women of Miami Beach, and my job and purpose in life is to get Republican candidates elected, because it is my belief that any Republican, even the worst Republicans, are still better than the best Democrat, and that they will lead us to a better economy and happier time and more freedom. The Republican Party has always been about freedom, and we are the party who ended slavery. So, Ed Vidal, he can speak.
Okay, my name is Ed Vidal. I'm the Vice President and General Counsel of the Election Integrity Brigade here in Miami-Dade County. We're very focused on election integrity, which means not only poll watching on election day and during early voting. As you might know, we no longer have election day, we have election season. So we have 2 weeks of early voting here in Florida. But election integrity also requires that we look at voter rolls, examine them, try to clean them up for people who don't belong there because they're dead, they've moved away for some other reason. It also requires that we look at the voter machines to make sure that they're accurately recording and counting what is in the paper ballots. Because here in Florida we use paper ballots. There's always a paper evidence of how people voted. But in the last primary in August 20th, 60 out of the 67 counties in Florida suffered breakdowns in their computer system for their voting machines. So we keep an eye on that. And then finally, we keep an eye on legislation with respect to vote by mail. Vote by mail, as the Jimmy Carter James Baker Commission pointed out in 2005, is the type of voting that most lends itself to fraud. Now here in Florida, you have to ask for a mail-in ballot. In California, everybody gets one mailed out. Here you have to ask for it, but we work on making sure that those are limited to the people who request for them. We also participate in signature verification. Remember, vote by mail doesn't use voter ID. So that's what our focus is. And in connection with that focus, we have reviewed, and we're definitely Republicans. As she said, the Republican Party is the means and the instrument today for preserving our freedom. I would say that since 2008 or so, the Democrat Party has been taken over by a leadership that is not only globalist, but also socialist and even jihadist. And you can see that today. You can see that not only do they have globalist policies like the climate change agenda, but they have socialist policies. Kamala Harris wants to impose wage and price controls. That's just not a capitalist way of running the economy. And then they're jihadists. The best candidate to accompany Kamala Harris would have been Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, but he was vetoed in effect by the jihadist wing of the Democrat Party because he's Jewish, and because the other thing is she was picking him and he's smarter than her, so he would have made her look bad. So those are two reasons why you should, and that tells you what kind of party the Democrat Party has become today. On the Republican side, we haven't always been perfect, but we were just talking about the new picture that came out of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was the guy who turned both of us into Republicans. Well, she was a Republican before.
I've been a Republican from day.
But I was always a conservative, but I grew up in Chicago and I went to college and law school there, so I didn't know any Republicans except for one classmate who was actually supporting Jerry Ford against Ronald Reagan. If you remember, Jerry Ford was the guy who thought he could defeat inflation by having these buttons printed up that said "Whip inflation now." So it took Ronald Reagan to make both of us, me a Republican, and I certainly voted for him in 1980. And we're very happy with the movie that just came out. I urge you to go see it.
It's a beautiful movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie. And if you look at Reagan, what made him a conservative and what made him successful is that he had two policies. He wanted to get the American economy growing again. And he did that by lowering taxes and imposing reasonable regulations, especially in the energy industry, which is so important, it affects all the other industries. So that was the first spoke. And he also supported Paul Volcker in reducing inflation and reining in government spending, government borrowing, which is what causes inflation. Inflation is always a monetary phenomenon, which is what the Biden-Harris administration has done. They've let the government spending get out of control, and so we've had inflation of at least 20% in the 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration. So that was the first thing that Reagan did. He allowed the American economy to grow. And I remember I was a young lawyer working in Chicago then, and I went to New York because there was just so much work. There was so much deal flow that people were doing deals, they were investing. From 1982, when the Reagan tax cuts and other policies kicked in, through 1989, when he left office, America grew every year at about rate higher than 5%. The American economy grew by about a third, and it was like building a new West German economy inside America. That's how much we're growing.
And the way I see it also is that the Reagan policy that he left in place, in my humble opinion, it was a boon to our economy that continued way beyond.
Continued for a long time.
For 25
Yes.
years, we had, for 25 years,
Yes.
was the result of Reagan's policy.
He laid a
that
good
he
foundation,
continued.
absolutely.
Yes.
But the other thing that he did was also yielded a dividend, was he won the Cold War. His
Yes.
approach was not the Nixon, Nixon, who was Nixon? Kissinger. Their, détente, rapprochement. No, he said, we win, you lose. That was his approach. We win, you lose. He sought peace through strength, so he rearmed America after the military had gone down after Vietnam and with the Carter administration. And in particular, he challenged the Soviet Union. He said, he called them an evil empire, and that's very important to tell the truth about people. They were an evil empire, and I've read that the dissidents in prison inside the Soviet Union, Nathan Sharansky and others, were really really livened up and received encouragement to see the President of the United States calling them out, the Soviet Union, for what they were. The other thing he did was he went to Berlin. He said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And 2 years later, the wall came down. It was torn down by the German people themselves, and the Soviets had lost the will. See, because war is a battle of wills. They had lost the will to defend their system because they knew it didn't work. So today, we're I think, at a real crossroads in American civilization. As I said, the Democrat Party has become way to the left. They are controlled not only by globalists, and the climate change agenda is part of that. They're controlled by socialists. They want to tax unearned,
They're fascists also, they're fascists.
well, they are. They have suppressed free speech, but they want to tax unrealized profits. Now, I learned tax at the University of Chicago Law School, and we had a very mild-mannered professor, Wally Blum, and he taught us tax 1, introduced us, and the only thing that would set him off is the suggestion that you should be taxed on your gains before you realize them. That was the only time he ever got really upset. So if it gets Wally Blum upset, you know it's a really socialist policy.
Well,
and that's what Biden and Harris are proposing.
No, and it's totally unfair policy. And when you tax people on realized profits, you distort.
Right.
You distort the economy,
terrible.
and you destroy it too.
Right.
You destroy it. Is destructive.
But beyond the economy,
and I'm going to say, like when like I said to you before, I arrived to the United States as a foreign student to pursue a college education at the end of 1972, and during Carter. So I lived through the Carter
the
times and the
inflation,
Democrats and all
gasoline
that.
lines.
And I saw that the people in the Kremlin and the Soviet were so happy with Carter and the Democrats at that
Right.
time because they were helping their cause.
Right.
They were turning the world into Marxist communist countries and state.
Right.
And I saw it, what was happening.
Well,
And I thought, oh my goodness, you know, I mean, basically Carter here, and there's a memoir that Somoza wrote, and who's the president of my country. And I remember in his book, he was in his bunker when he was being basically attacked by terrorists and, you know, by Marxists and communists around the world. And Carter and the Democrats here withdrew, helped to Somoza, put him against the wall.
Well, they did the same thing in Iran, and they let the mullahs take over, and look where they are now.
Exactly, and I remember Somoza in his book thinking, is it possible that the president of the United States, who was then Jimmy Carter, is a communist?
Yes.
That came to it, and I thought that too.
Yes.
That this is where we were heading, and I thought at that point, my goodness, I said, what am I going to do if the communists take over the United States?
Yeah. Well,
What
now
am I
you
gonna
might
do?
find
Because
out.
I'd rather die than not to live in freedom.
Right.
So it's die or free. I don't know who said that, but
Live
somebody
free or
said-
die. That was
Exactly.
New Hampshire in
Exactly.
the war. Well, it's funny because Jimmy Carter expressly said that we should not have an inordinate fear of communism. Not an inordinate fear of communism. And that's the kind of thinking that you've seen in the Democrat Party. But now it's become a positive embrace of socialism, and which leads to communism. And so that's where the Democrat Party has gone way left, and that's why you see people like RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and others leaving it and joining the Republican cause. So, but this year we have a president who really, I would say, is the next Ronald Reagan, and that's our past and I think future president, Donald Trump. He is a zany, off the wall, unconventional candidate. He was never in politics. He was a real estate developer and a media personality, but all his policies were conservative policies. He reduced taxes. He had reasonable regulations. He supported our troops. He believed in peace through strength. There was nobody killed. No Americans were killed in Afghanistan during the last year and a half of his administration. He handled foreign policy in a respectful way, in a peacekeeping way. Look at what's happened now. So the first candidate that we want to talk about, the first Republican candidate, is President Reagan, who's running again, and who I believe is now, I'm sorry, President Trump, sorry, I get them mixed up. So that's good, very good, thank you. I'm glad I got you here.
Okay, I think the movie got you.
Yeah, the movie got me, absolutely.
Got excited. I mean, it was.
But I think in a sense, Trump is the new Reagan, this year's Reagan. He stands for lower taxes, reasonable regulations, energy independence, peace through strength. And, you know, he warts and all, he is the man to stand against this socialist tyranny that is being imposed on us by the Democrats. And, you know, the tyranny isn't just economic, it's also in free speech suppression. Look at how...
And persecution, political persecution, like I have never experienced or seen in the United States.
Right.
I witnessed it and I saw it in Nicaragua.
Right.
My father was a political prisoner. My dad had to stand in a kangaroo court.
Right.
So I understand all these things.
Well,
and what is happening here is even worse.
Right.
It's worse.
Well, the example of that is the lawfare that the Democrats have exercised against Donald Trump in the last couple of years since he declared he was running again. First of all, his home at Mar-a-Lago was improperly raided. They had armed. They didn't need that. They could have asked for those documents.
And they were working. His president attorneys was working.
Yep.
With the
Right. That was
the
totally
archive.
uncalled for.
Yeah, exactly. It was not necessary.
That was an attempt to intimidate him, and he's not a guy who's intimidated. But then this year, look at what you've had. You've had the E. Jean Carroll, the alleged rape in Bonwit Teller, or maybe it was Bergdorf Goodman in New York.
Yeah.
There's no evidence for that.
No evidence.
Absolutely. And my wife, who was shopped at Bergdorf Goodman, said you could not be by yourself in the changing room because there are so many employees there that they would see.
Cameras. I think even then they had cameras.
Yes. So
in these stores.
that is a total kangaroo court. There's a series of kangaroo courts.
Totally manufactured, invented, and created. And I understand that this woman was being paid by Democrat donors.
Reid Hoffman.
Exactly. She was being paid
Reed Hastings,
to file these charges
yes.
with no evidence whatsoever.
And they also,
Zero.
they got the New York State Legislature to extend the statute of limitations just for this
Exactly.
1 year.
They broke laws.
They broke
made
the
up
law.
laws,
That's the thing.
They created charges. They invented charges.
They undermined the rule of law. And when I came to America from Cuba, when my family brought me when I was 9 years old in 1966, and I'm a lawyer here in America, and the thing that is most different between America and Latin America is respect for the rule of law. America used to have respect for the rule of law, but it's been eroding, and it's eroding because of these Democrat lawfare. That is the biggest example. And I think the law in New York, which was always very respected for commercial purposes, is New York's bar is allowing the New York law to be undermined by all these kangaroo courts.
They destroy our justice system.
Yep,
The
yep.
Democrats have destroyed our justice system,
Yep.
and they want to pack the Supreme Court.
Yes, they want that.
They want to.
That's what
it's-
Venezuela did. That's what Hugo Chavez did.
Yeah,
Pack the
it's-
Supreme Court.
It's like unreal. It's like unreal.
But
It's-
if you look at the other examples of lawfare, for example, Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, sued the Trump organization for inflating the value of their assets that they were giving as collateral. Well, every developer that goes to get a loan tells the bank, oh, this is great. The bank does their own analysis. The banks were not fooled. They made their loans, they got paid interest, principal on a timely basis.
They do their own diligence. I mean,
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
don't depend on what the developer
Yeah.
or what the
Yeah,
person
right.
who's seeking the
But-
loan tells them is worth. They
Yeah,
do
so
their own
there
diligence.
it was supposed to allege fraud with no victim.
And no fraud.
Right, and no fraud either.
No fraud,
the,
no victim.
The judge in that case was totally off base. He assessed Mar-a-Lago at 18 million or some really low number, just ridiculous. So that's another kangaroo case. And then the biggest one is Alvin Bragg, who sued for the legal payments that were made in connection with the Stormy Daniels. Again, there was nothing wrong. At most it was a bookkeeping mistake. Other people like Hillary Clinton had
They
made.
decided it was a bookkeeping mistake.
Yeah.
They decided
Yeah.
on their own because basically in the Trump Corporation it was paid as a legal fee,
Right.
and which was the correct.
Yeah,
it's a correct, and everybody will do it. When you go to pay for hush money, it's a legal fee.
Well, it's a
legal money.
non-disclosure agreement, which is standard in
Exactly,
business.
it's very standard, and he those payments went to his attorney to
Right.
pay for the hush money, whether it was true or not. Trump denies that he had any affair with
Yeah.
this woman, but this happened, especially with famous people or rich people, where there are people who
Yeah.
accuse them, and they just pay them to go away.
Right.
For the deed to go away.
Non-disclosure
whether it's-
agreements are
yeah,
very
exactly.
common in
Yeah.
business, so
And
that's not a big
at
deal.
worst, if they were right, but in my opinion, they're not right. It's political persecution
Right, yeah.
and weaponization of our justice system. In my opinion, it was at worst, it would be a fine, like what they did to
Yeah,
Hillary
yeah, that's
when
fine.
she paid for that for the Russian.
Yeah, she paid for the dossier, right?
The
right.
dossier, and
Right.
she called it a legal thing.
Yeah, because she
and-
paid it
yeah.
to her lawyer, that's fine.
And I think it was, she paid a fine of like $5,000.
Yeah, and nothing.
I mean, and that was.
But
the
that's
end of
not the only one. Then in Fulton County, Georgia, which was the site of some electoral shenanigans in 2020, the district attorney, Fannie Willis, mounted this huge case. They indicted not only Trump, but about 20 other Trump lawyers, the Trump chief of staff. I think Rudy Giuliani got caught up in there. And she claimed that it was a RICO, Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organization Act. Well, it turned out her case fell apart completely. She was acting wrongfully. She hired her lover to be the chief prosecutor, and he had no experience prosecuting criminal offenses. He was like a speeding ticket and traffic violation and accidents lawyer. And that case has fallen apart. That has been a totally ridiculous prosecution. But then you also have, and by the way, all these prosecutions were directed indirectly by the Department of Justice.
And the White House.
Yeah, and the White House. the Department of Justice.
And the FBI.
Well, the FBI is part of that. Yeah.
Yeah. All of this was coordinated.
Yes.
Lawfare.
Right.
And with the case in what I find like really disturbing also is that the Democrats have destroyed the attorney-client
Right.
privilege.
In the
I mean, for attorneys not to be able to have this confidence that they can discuss anything with the client and be confidential, they destroy the justice system.
The Democrats have given up on the rule of law. Then Abe Lincoln said it at his address in the Cooper Union when he was campaigning in 1860. He said Democrats will rule or ruin. They will either get their way and rule or ruin our country.
Or ruin, exactly.
And that's what they did. Now, the federal prosecutions also took place, one in the District of Columbia, and that was cut down by the Supreme Court ruling that the president has limited immunity so long as he's acting in an official capacity. And then in the District of South Florida, the local judge, Eileen Cannon, remember her name, she could be a Supreme Court appointment, but she ruled that the federal prosecutor, Jack Smith, had been improperly appointed, and that has pretty much stopped the lawfare. And fortunately, I think Trump is getting beyond that lawfare and moving forward to a successful campaign. One thing to keep in mind is that Trump knocked out Biden. It was like a prize fight, and he knocked him out. And the Democrat triumvirate, the Democrat leadership that had selected Biden in 2020. Because if you remember, the Democrats for the last three presidential cycles, have not relied on democratic methods to pick their presidential nominee.
Correct.
In 2016, Senator Bernie Sanders was winning all the delegates, and that was no good because Hillary had the super delegates, and they swamped him, and she got the nomination. In 2020, Bernie won the first three contests, the Iowa caucuses where they never finished counting, Nevada, and then Nevada was I don't know if it was a primary, and then New Hampshire primary, Bernie won, Biden left early in the afternoon because he knew he was going to get creamed.
Well,
right?
Yeah, and this year the Democrat voters in Florida didn't even have a primary.
They didn't have a choice, right?
I mean, the Democrat Party is the most undemocratic party.
That is correct.
In history.
So the Democrat, what I call a triumvirate, at the end of the Roman Republic, you had a triumvirate of Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey. Here we have the Democrat Party as a triumvirate of Obama, Pelosi, and Schumer. And they decided, and they told their man, Congressman, what's his name from?
Schumer?
No, the congressman from South Carolina who fingered Biden in March of 2020 before the South Carolina, Jim Clyburn. And he said, he fingered Biden and said, "You're our presidential candidate." And he got everybody else, including Bernie and everyone else, Klobuchar, etc., to stand down. And in return for standing down, Biden promised to push through a radical, extreme left-wing agenda, but he didn't tell anyone because he campaigned in the basement, kind of faking that he was a moderate, nice old guy. So he was elected, but that was not a democratic process for electing the candidate for the Democrat Party in 2020. Now this year, after Biden got knocked out
But I want to ask you about how is it possible that Biden won in 2020, but then Trump was able to knock him out in one debate?
He was a fake candidate.
How is that in 2020? How is it that
he
he got more votes than anyone in the history of this nation
I think there were
without
shenanigans.
campaigning?
Right.
I mean, he was the basement president.
Yeah, I think there were some shenanigans in 2020.
Yeah, he was the basement president.
But
and then this guy who had the most vote, he gets knocked out. After having won the primary, he gets knocked out in one debate by Trump because it's obvious that the Democrats and the media has been lying to us
Right.
for the last 4 years,
Yes.
saying this guy is competent, he's on top of his game, and then
Yep,
everybody.
lying it on top of it. But
yeah.
what he got unjustly, he lost unjustly. I mean, in effect, Obama, Pelosi, and Schumer conducted a coup d'etat. It's a very Latin thing. They told him, you know, you either resign now, or we're going to use the 25th Amendment to say that you are senile, you can't do your job. So they forced him out. Now, one thing to watch for, I think that he was forced out, so he had to give in.
Mm-hmm.
Jill was still very upset, but on his way out, he did something to them. He nominated and endorsed Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, as we all know, before her endorsement by Biden, was a terrible candidate. Everybody agreed that she was a terrible candidate. She was not the one that the Democrat triumvirate wanted.
Well, she was the most unpopular vice president,
right.
even more unpopular than
Dick Cheney.
Than Dick Cheney. She
Right.
was even more unpopular than Dick Cheney. That the Democrat
Right.
said he was a criminal and a
Yeah, war criminal,
and that
Well-
he was profiting from all of these wars.
Right.
But now they're very proud and they're very happy that he endorsed Kamala.
Yeah, but-
and even Putin is endorsing Kamala.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so.
Well, but the point is that Kamala had never received a single vote for president in a primary, either in
Correct.
2020 or 2016. Biden had received 14 million, even though the primaries were rigged. RFK Jr. was not allowed to run in them.
He was
There was
not allowed.
only one choice in
Yeah.
in Florida.
The
So
Democrat Party will not allow anyone
It is
to
not
challenge
Democratic.
Biden. Yeah, exactly.
it is not Democrat.
The
so-
undemocratic party.
So they did a coup d'etat against him, but on his way out, he got him back. He endorsed Kamala, who's a terrible candidate. Now, the Clintons came aboard and endorsed her too, because it's Obama who got rid of Biden. It took him a while to accept Kamala, but then he had to because it was a done deal. And she had this very glowing presidential, coronation of sorts at the Democrat National Convention. And for a while there, she was on a sugar high, and she was doing very well in the polls. Well, let me tell you, as of September 8th, she's in trouble in the polls. She did not get a bounce from the convention, and the polls are now starting to break for Trump in a big way. Even Nate Silver, a University of Chicago class of 2000 graduate, that my wife, who's also an alum, gave him an alumni award for achievement back in 2014, and I was there to give it to him. He has now come out with Trump in the high 50s to even 60% chance of winning. Her sugar high is coming off. We'll see what happens in the debate on Tuesday, September 10th. But I'm here to tell you that Trump is a very strong candidate and I'm much relieved. I don't think we're going to have to go to the mattresses against the communists that Kamala and Governor Walz is probably even worse or just as
Well,
bad.
and neither of them are talking to the media except
No,
for that
They're
one
totally
interview that they did. But
Fake,
that interview
yeah, that was not very
was
effective.
like a propaganda.
Right,
It was
right.
more like a
Soviet style.
Yeah, it was like a propaganda. It wasn't live.
Yeah,
It was
I think the
edited.
balloon is popping, and I think Pennsylvania seems to be going for Trump. In part, her one decision that she was given to make was to pick the VP, and she failed to pick Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania. We've discussed it before, because he's Jewish and because he's smarter than her, and he would have made her look bad. Well, that decision is really turning against her, because the people in Pennsylvania are very focused on fracking, energy production. Pennsylvania is a big energy state, Pittsburgh area in particular, and I think Trump seems to be having things break his way in that state. So that having the governor on her ticket would have been a big plus for her. So that okay.
Yeah, and some of my friends, because they know that I'm very involved with the Republican candidates and getting Republican candidates elected, from overseas and here and all of that. They said to me, why don't you guys pick Haley? Haley, to be a
a corporate.
candidate.
She's very good, but she's a corporatist woman.
And I try to explain to them that that she's a very nice person, a candidate, and of course more competent than any Democrat,
Right.
more competent than any of them, Biden or Kamala or anyone around. But I told her that where we are at this moment in time requires a strong leader like Trump, and that there's no other
Oh yeah, no, he's the man
personal
this year.
personality with a strong leadership that is needed for this moment in time. He is the right man.
And his response
at
to
the
being
right
shot,
time.
it tells you. He says, "Fight, fight, fight." He was not afraid, and he's out there. He
Yeah,
knows he
yeah,
could be
yeah.
assassinated.
And I don't think that he ever, wanted to get in politics. I seen some of
Right.
his videos when he was young, and he just thought that the political arena was just something like too nasty and too dirty, and that why would he want to get, in such an
Well, finally he
area,
realized that.
such an area. But I think that if he hadn't thrown in his candidacy or his name when Hillary was running to be the president of the United States, this country would have already been gone.
Right.
This country would have already been gone. This country would already be a Marxist socialist state of the United States. And I think he was able to stop that, and why the media and the establishment, the elite and the globalists, are so much against them, because he is a threat
Yep.
to the elite and to that power and to the globalists, and he is, he just
He's made himself the symbol of freedom against the totalitarian socialist state.
correct, and he is for the working people, the working
Absolutely.
class. He's for the American people, because somehow, even though he was born to in wealth and family that was, but he was more successful than his
Right.
father himself, which is not an easy thing to do, because when you are born, with such comfort, there's no motivation for you to succeed, because you already are born into wealth. But he was successful beyond his dreams, and I think that but somehow he relates to the common person. He just relates.
Well, I think he's a builder.
Yeah.
He's a construction man, and he's used to working with builders, construction workers.
Yeah, plumbers.
That's a big part of it. Yeah, he
and
respects them.
electricians,
He knows
yeah.
that they're tradesmen. They know what they're doing. They
Right.
do things.
Right.
So
Okay,
that's part of it.
so Ed, now tell us about our Republican candidates for Miami-Dade.
Okay, well,
yeah.
beyond the Trumpster, the next big race is Senator Rick Scott is running for re-election. And Rick Scott won a very close race back 6 years ago in 2018. And then in that race, he lost Miami-Dade County by 20 or 21 points. This year, polls are showing him basically tied with a former Democrat congresswoman who's running for U.S. Senate. So I think he's running very strong. I think his positions, he has his plan to rescue America, very conservative, fiscal conservatism, and fighting woke in the schools. So he is proposing what most of the people of Florida want, and I expect that he will win decisively against his opponent. He will probably break even in Miami-Dade County, and if he can do that, then he will do fine. And he's been down here. He's working hard.
Yeah, but tell me about his background, because I thought that he grew up like in a Section 8.
Yeah,
type
no,
of,
he was.
He comes from
He
like
comes from
very-
a broken family. He grew up in public housing.
Yeah, public housing.
Right.
Yeah, he grew up in public. He was poor.
Yeah, he was
poor,
very
and
poor.
And he's a self-made man.
Well, after high school, he
and
went into the
and
Navy.
he's not arrogant,
No.
and he doesn't brag about it. He's just a very sensible and a very common sense
Yes.
person. I find that he's not even like partisan. He's just like,
Well, he's conservative.
he's conservative, but he's not how can I say, he's not partisan. I think he's pretty neutral, and he's just a common sense and a neutral person.
But common sense has become a partisan thing.
Well, common sense is a Republican thing.
Right, it is now a Republican
And I
thing.
think that Kamala is trying to use some of those terms in
Yeah,
her
but-
campaign.
yeah.
I hear her talking about common sense, and I'm going like,
No.
common sense?
No.
Common sense, that's something that I
Yeah.
think is very Republican.
But Rick Perry grew up in a single parent family. Scott, yeah, Rick is Texas. Rick Scott grew up in a single parent family. He was in the Navy as an enlisted man, and that was during the Vietnam War. He didn't go out to Vietnam, but he was in the Navy for that time. And then he went to college and law school in Texas, and he became an senior executive for the Hospital Corporation of America. And then about 10 or 12 years ago, he cashed in his chips, and like Donald Trump, he saw that politics needed to be straightened out, so he ran for governor of Florida in 2010, I think that was. And at that time, Florida was suffering from the Great Recession. There were a lot of empty buildings on Brickell Avenue, and unemployment was high. And he really got to work. He made Florida a competitive state. He was always competing with the state of Texas to attract the most jobs.
And he was very proactive.
Yes.
Bringing business to
Bringing
Florida.
business and
I
straightening
remember.
out
He was
the
very
finances.
proactive. The first time that I ever heard him talk,
Mhm.
or I became aware, of Rick Scott, I liked his common sense. I
Yeah.
liked what he spoke about it, and he talked about it. And he's a business man.
Right.
And
Very pragmatic.
I like business because
Mhm.
I am a businesswoman,
Mhm.
and I prefer to have a business person in any elected office to a politician, a career
Right.
politician. I find career politicians are not helpful.
Well, I think you should beware of people who go into politics to earn a living or to enhance their financial status.
Right.
You should have your own career, your business, your profession outside of politics, and then you leave
Right.
that to serve the public. That's really the ideal of the founding fathers.
Yeah,
Not to be
exactly.
a professional career politician.
And make money out of that.
No, that is always
like the Clintons and
yeah,
the Obamas.
and the Obama, yeah.
And the Gores and
Yeah.
and now
And the Bidens,
the
the Bidens, right.
also. Yeah,
Yeah.
they are career.
America used to have
politicians.
mafia crime families. Today we have political crime families.
Yeah.
The Clintons and so on.
Okay, so that Rick Scott, and hopefully he will win decisively.
I think he is
And I
doing
know
well.
that you and I are committed to bringing all the votes that we.
Absolutely. Well, he's working hard. A couple of weeks ago, I went to a lunch down in Pinecrest that was hosted by the community newspapers, and he was very effective. There were a lot of people. It was a big line to get your picture taken. And then last week, I think he was at the Women's Republican Club of Miami Federated, which meets in Coral Gables. And again, he had a very successful, in fact, if you go to MiamiIndependent.com, you'll see that I wrote an article on those events. So he's working hard. I think he will win, and I think he will run and win for Senate Majority Leader, replacing the turtle Mitch
Schumer.
McConnell. No, Mitch McConnell.
Because
I expect the Republicans.
But hopefully, if the Republicans
Yeah,
are
no,
able,
I think they were going to do
then-
that.
and he will be fabulous.
Right,
He will be
and I think he will
fantastic.
get President Trump's support for that. So I think we're in good shape there.
Okay,
But then,
next.
the next we have to look at some of the congressmen. And I know a lot of people are not happy with some of our congressmen, but they are better than the alternative. So, for example, going from the Keys up, you've got Carlos Jimenez is running in that district. Then you
What
get,
district is that?
number is 28.
28. Okay, so
Yeah.
Carlos Jimenez.
Carlos
is in
Jimenez
District
goes
28.
down to the Keys. It comes up into
Carlos
Hammocks,
Jimenez.
yeah. Then we have Maria Elvira Salazar, who is mostly the southwest side, and she's also very conservative. And then we have Mario Diaz-Balart, which is to the west. It's in Doral.
And all
he
of
goes
this,
to
all
Collier
of these are
County.
incumbent. Right now, Carlos Jimenez is the incumbent
Yes.
for District 28 for Congressional District, and Maria Elvira Salazar is the incumbent for District 27.
Yep.
And then we have
Mario Diaz-Balart.
Balar in District 26.
Yep. That goes from Doral, where I live, west of Collier County.
Right.
And then we have some challengers. Let's see.
In 24.
In 24,
And that's my district, right
your
here,
district in Miami Beach, Frederica
that's
Wilson, who has wears these funny hats. By the way, Frederica Wilson is one of two congressmen who have hardly shown up during this Congress. They have worked remotely almost entirely. So if anybody knows what she's up to.
And she's been on this seat for how long? How many years?
Several years, around 10 years.
Or more.
Yeah, so she's being
Or
challenged, or she's being challenged by a young Republican, Jesus Gabriel Navarro.
Jesus Navarro.
Yeah, and I think as
I
a
met
district,
him a few times
as a
because
district,
he's in my district.
as the district becomes more Hispanic, I think it's
Yes.
going to be harder for Federica to keep. So I'm hoping that this is his second run at her. He lost before.
Yeah,
and
but Jesus, I want to say, I met him a few times. Very smart.
yeah,
Very smart.
and works hard. He knocks
very
on doors.
focused, very centered. I mean, of course, I
Okay.
want to work all I can to try, but it's
Yep.
difficult against an incumbent who's been there
Well-
forever, and she seems to be
Well, I think every time you look at her, you realize she's the wrong person with those funny hats. So.
exactly.
Now, going up a little bit into Broward, they've got in Weston and Pembroke Pines, that's the district where Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz is the congresswoman, and she's being challenged by Chris Eddy, who is a very conservative Weston city commissioner. He's a retired Air Force general. He is very heavily involved in all kinds of intelligence analysis for his whole career. He was in the intelligence service, and he's gotten endorsed by General Michael Flynn, who was also head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. So he's a very serious guy, and if you're in that district in Broward, I recommend that you look at him and vote for Chris.
I think we should get a
Voter guide?
I think, and I think we should get a group of us to go there and knock at doors. And
Okay, well, they'll be happy to take you.
We will organize something like that. To boots on the ground, get us all there to go out there and to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, in the state legislature, there's one Republican senator who's up this time. Senators are not up every time. Brian Avila in Hialeah. He also covers Doral. So he's part of the Republican supermajority in the state legislature, and we certainly want to continue with that.
I think they're all incumbents.
Yes, they're all incumbents.
They're all incumbents.
Well, there's a couple I'll get to at the end. If you go starting with District 120 down in Key West, you've got Jim Mooney, Juan Carlos Porras, Mike Redondo. 117 is a Democrat, and he's being challenged by Beatrice Lawson. That is down in Florida City and Homestead. So if you're voting down there, Beatrice Lawson.
And how's that going?
Well,
What are
I
the
mean,
voters saying?
some people who know, Ron Goronsky thought that there might be a chance for a conservative Republican in that district. So it's really a question of how much support she gets from the Republican Party, but she could put on a good challenge to this incumbent Democrat. And it's one of the few Democrats.
Okay, we're gonna need
Yeah.
to concentrate on that. See
Then,
what we can do.
Danny Perez is from Westchester. He is the incoming Speaker of the House. Omar Blanco is in my old district around Dadeland Mall. He won a Republican primary, but he's a very conservative guy. He's a firefighter, head of the firefighters. So we had him speak at our election integrity group. In Coral Gables, you have Demi Busada. In Brickell, you have Vicky Lopez. In Hialeah, you have Alex Rizzo. In Doral, you have David Barrero, who is a very strong Trump supporter. In Miami Lakes, you have Tom Fabrizio, who's very diligent about his district. In Miami Beach, you have Fabian Basabe. Miami Beach has always been a Democrat stronghold, and he's got a difficult race, but I think he's certainly worth supporting, and we're supporting him.
Oh yeah, yeah. Fabian is also someone that strikes me like Scott, common sense guy,
Oh, yeah, right.
center.
Yep.
And he was the first Republican 2 years ago to win the district in 20 years.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, and he's doing a very good job. He was very effective
Yep.
and efficient in controlling. You know, for the past few years, we had some very wild spring break. And,
Yep, yep,
you know,
yep.
and we've been in the news in a very negative manner. And this time, Fabian, with our new mayor, Stephen Minor, and our commissioners, all our commissioners, and our governor worked together. And this was the first spring break that we had where there was no violence.
All right, good.
Where it was just very enjoyable.
Okay.
Very enjoyable, and we didn't have any problems. And I think the police was happy, our residents were happy, and I'm right here on Ocean
Yeah.
Drive, so I'm in the heart of everything. So it was a very good spring break.
So Fabian
And
gets
it was
credit for that.
Fabian, yeah, and our mayor and all our
Okay.
elected officials.
Now, in Broward, which is turning more red because it's turning more Hispanic, we have a couple of Hispanic Republicans who are challenging the Democratic incumbents. In District 103, George Navarini is challenging Susan Bartleman, and she's very progressive.
And this Navarini guy also, I mean, I find him also very qualified,
Oh,
very
yeah.
intelligent person, very,
Yep.
very, yeah. I'm in one of his chat groups
Mm-hmm.
with Barbara,
Okay.
yeah.
And then in District 102, Mary Lopez Palma, she is mother, lawyer, and political activist. She's also very conservative.
And she's challenging another Democrat?
She's challenging a progressive Democrat, Michael Gottlieb.
Oh, I know Michael.
Yeah, well, Mary is challenging. Mary is a Cuban immigrant. She's a lawyer.
Okay. They got live, they like landlords in Broward. There are many, like,
Well,
family.
Well, Mary's husband is, I described him as a real estate mogul in Hialeah.
Oh, okay.
So, but she's very conservative, family focused, and I think she would make a great candidate. If she is a great candidate, she'd make a great representative. Then coming down here again to Miami-Dade County, for county commissioners, in District 7, Raquel Regalado is running, she's the incumbent, and she's being challenged by a progressive former state rep and mayor of Pinecrest. So Raquel Regalado, her father is running for a countywide office. He's a former Miami City mayor. So we support Raquel in that contest. Going on to school board members, there's a runoff. There's an open seat here in Miami Beach,
Right.
and Martin Karp is the Republican running against Joseph Geller. Karp has been on the school
Well,
board before.
Yeah, but I think that Martin Karp is independent.
Okay.
So it's either him or Geller, and Geller is a
Progressive
very
Democrat, yeah.
Democrat, and he's a career politician.
Right.
Also, he's been in politics all his life. So yeah, we are going to throw our support to Martin.
Okay, now in District 7, there's another runoff. Mary Blanco, who was appointed by Governor DeSantis, he's very conservative, is running against Max Tuckman, who is a woman, despite her name, and she's very woke and progressive. So that's another race where the woke,
For the school board.
yeah, for the school board. So we suggest Mary Blanco is the person to vote for there. Then the sheriff, I'm surprised that the Democrats are running anybody, because they're the party of defund the police and no cash bail and all that. So, but they are running a sheriff. He doesn't have real law enforcement experience. He's a corrections officer, the chief of corrections in Broward. So he's been a prison warden, and he's running against Rosie Cordero Stutz.
But I understand that this guy Reyes, it was handpicked by
Right,
Cabo.
by Levine
handpicked.
Cabo, who's the Democrat
Yeah,
mayor.
and yes,
But
exactly.
he
yeah.
showed his incompetence when the Copa America finals game was played at Hard Rock Cafe, and it was a
Right.
total mess, and the
Right,
sheriffs
right.
were not in control of the situation.
Right.
So the Republican is Rosie Cordero Stutz. Now there were 11 Republican contenders in the primary.
Correct.
Unfortunately, Florida, you can win a primary without getting a majority. In Texas, for example, you have to have a majority. In Florida, nonpartisan races, you have to have a majority. So that means you have a runoff if necessary. Well, Rosie won with 20. There were 11 candidates. She got 24% of the vote. The second place guy got 22% of the vote. So this is an example of why I think the legislature should look at requiring that the elections be won with a majority, so that you have a runoff between the top two vote getters. But anyway, we're going to support Rosie for sheriff.
And
right?
Rosie has been in the
She's been in the Miami-Dade police for over 20 years. She's very experienced, very qualified.
And I think that she already is working.
Yeah, she's already there.
In there, working for this transition. She's already in there, so it will be a very easy transition because this is the first time we have a sheriff run. I think in Miami-Dade in 16 years.
60 since 1966.
Oh, it's in 1966.
It was always appointed by it was the only Miami was the only county in the United States that didn't have an elected sheriff, and it's the only county in the United States that that has a hyphenated name. Those are two things that now will be ending. Now
okay, so we want Rosie Cordero for sheriff.
Yep.
So if you're listening to our live conversation here, remember Rosie Cordero for sheriff for Miami-Dade.
Okay, now here's another one that's really important to our election integrity brigade, and that is the supervisor of elections. Again, has not been elected since 1966, but here we have a case of Alina Garcia, who is a Republican stalwart who has been with the party for a long time. And she was a state representative.
She's had different positions.
She was a state rep, and she resigned that to run for this county-wide office. And we're supporting her completely because the other guy, Juan Carlos Blanes, is a former Republican state rep who in 2020, when he was termed out of office, for some reason freaked out. He suffers from Trump derangement syndrome. And the real question that I have for everyone is, Blanes is a lawyer. He's an election so-called expert. He lectures on that in law school. But can we trust him? Can we trust any Democrat to run elections? Look at what I was saying about how the Democrats parties picked their own presidential candidate. In 2016, they cheated Bernie out of what he was winning with the delegates. 2016, their presidential candidate was undemocratically selected. In 2020 again, they anointed Joe Biden, even though Bernie was winning the elections, so they picked him. And then in 2024, they conducted a coup d'etat against the somewhat duly elected, the president, and they forced him to not run again, and instead they anointed the vice president. Well, he anointed the vice president, and now they're supporting her. She has never had a single vote for her in any presidential primary.
And here's another contradiction that I find very hypocritical too, because I mean the Democrats are, the media and the Democrats for the last 2 years, all they said about it, how strong our economy is, and the stock market is doing so well, and if everything is like so fantastic and so wonderful, why Biden stepped down, or why did they get rid of him?
Yep.
I mean, he's the incumbent, and the one that they selected, and he apparently is doing a great job, but yet they ask him to step down. So it just doesn't make sense.
No, so this is one where Democrats cannot be trusted handling our elections. They have shown that they have no regard.
They cannot even run their own.
Right, their own elections are not democratic, and so we cannot trust them to handle our elections.
So
just like we can't trust them to be sheriff, because therefore defund the police and free bail.
So be sure that for
Alina
supervisor
Garcia,
of election that you vote for the Republican candidate. Her name is Alina Garcia. She's competent, she's experienced, and she's the Republican that will serve us all well.
Yeah. Now, the next one is tax collector. That's another new position in Miami-Dade County. Dariel Fernandez is running for the Republicans against a former state representative who has a very big war chest from his days of being a state representative. But Dariel will be a reliable tax collector. Same in property appraiser, we have Tomas Regalado is running. He's a former Miami City Commissioner, father of Raquel Regalado, who's running for county commissioner. He's running in a county-wide race, and we recommend him for appraiser. Clerk of the court and controller, we recommend Juan Fernandez Barquin. He was appointed to a vacancy by the Governor DeSantis, and he is a very reliable guy. Will do a good job. So those are the county races that where we recommend Republican candidates, and we might put together a slate or a voter guide. Now, do you want to go into some of the local races that I've identified?
About
Okay,
North
so
Miami?
in the city commissioner races in the city of North Miami Beach, we recommend Lynn Sue in District 7. I've known her for a long time. She's run before for state rep, and she's a very reliable conservative, fiscal conservative in particular. Will do a great job for the people of
she's a
North Miami Beach.
she's a lovely person.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very intelligent, competent, and just very pleasant
Yep.
to work with her. And she helped me found this chapter
yeah.
of the Republican Women in Miami Beach. Without Lynn, I would not have been
Right.
able to pull it all together. So I'm
Okay.
very grateful to her.
Okay, the next one is very close to me. It's the Downtown Doral Community Development District. Downtown Doral and the residential units there were developed by the Codina partnership. And what they did was when what's now Trump National Doral was the original Doral National Golf Club, developed in the 1950s by Doris and Al Kunkel. And they're the ones that bought a big chunk, and they have 4 golf courses in basically a square mile. But they died, and their children didn't really want to keep up the business. So about 12 years ago, the Doral National Golf Club was sold in an estate auction. However, the Codina partners were able to break off the land east of Galloway Road. So the Trump organization bought the big chunk of land with 4 golf courses in it. Codina bought the one golf course, the White Course, which was for public use, that was east of Galloway Road. And there they built a 2-block strip, commercial strip, which has a lot of great restaurants. And then they also built, together with Lennar, a development of townhouses, single-family houses, and some high-rise and mid-rise condominiums and rentals. So this is an area where I live, and I'm very interested. So if you're voting in Doral, I recommend for the Downtown Doral Community Development District, Francisco Bird, who's chairman of our Homeowners Association. We keep a close eye on that because there's a lot of fraud in the Homeowners Association. It's important to have reliable people like
honest
Francisco
people.
Bird and and Jaime Mercado is another one. So we have 2 people running for that community development district in Doral.
You can only vote for one?
No, you can vote for both of them. There
You
are
can
2
vote for
different
both.
seats.
Okay.
So it's very important. For example, the Hammocks is a huge homeowner, so they had big fraud there, and the state's attorney had to come in. So you have to keep an eye on that. Doral City Council is also having elections, and there we recommend seat number 3, Irina Villarino. She is the daughter of the family that owns the Las Vegas Cuban Cuisine restaurants. She has 2 restaurants in Doral, and we're good friends. She's very reliable. She is an independent. All these people are Republicans, but they're not. She has her own independent money. She's a successful businesswoman. She's not going into politics to make money. So she can be independent. She can look after taxpayers' interests. And I think that's something that's very important when we pick people who go into politics. Another place is the Socialist Republic of Sunny Isles, right here next to Miami Beach. They have a very strong Soviet influence in that city government, but I would say to counter that Soviet influence, in city council seat number 1, Jerry Joseph is somebody that we recommend. He's also an REC committeeman. And in seat number 3, Fabiola Stuyvesant. She's a Venezuelan American, very conservative, and I would support those two. Next, on the judicial branch, there are 2 Supreme Court justices that are up for retention. They were both appointed by Governor DeSantis, and Renata Francis and Meredith Sasso. They're both very good. They both voted to keep Amendment 4 off the ballot, okay? It was 4-3, the 3 women voted against it. I agree with them. So I say that they should be retained. So you vote yes on those 2 Supreme Court justices.
What do you mean that they voted?
You know, well, the language of the amendment number 4 is very vague.
Yes,
And
I
so
know
the
that.
language is challenged, and it went up to the Florida Supreme Court, and the Florida Supreme Court voted 4-3 to allow it to go on the ballot.
Oh, with the vague language.
Yes, and the 3 women on the court voted against, and the 4 men voted for. They're all Republicans, but yeah.
Okay, so the 3 women voted against
Yeah.
because it was vague.
It was vague.
But the men didn't know any better.
Well, you know, the men.